Now let's flip it over to the Green Bay Packers. Because this was a stunner. And I guess in hindsight, we could have seen what was coming, potentially, when it was reported that Davante Adams informed the Packers he's not playing under the franchise tag and he wants a long-term deal. And they're too far apart.
Right.
Now, I didn't think it would materialize this quickly, that there would be another team that comes in and blows the doors off of the situation. And I know that, number one, the Packers worked very hard to put out the word to willing beat writers last night that the Packers were ready to offer more, or did offer more, at least as much, if not more, than what the Raiders offered in terms of dollars. Here's the important point there. The Packers notoriously refuse to guarantee money beyond the first year of non-quarterback contracts. They will only fully guarantee the first year. The Packers and the Bengals are the two that stick to that. The Steelers deviated last year for TJ Watt. Remains to be seen whether they'll do it for other players. Packers and Bengals, non-quarterbacks, were only guaranteeing the first-year payout, not beyond that. It makes no sense for the Packers to do it. They're publicly owned. There's no owner that has a super yacht to try to maintain. The money can all get poured back into the team. I don't know why they refuse to put money in escrow to handle the guarantee for the second year and sometimes into the third year. We need to see the structure, but my guess is the Raiders fully guaranteed beyond the first year. And that's a huge difference. So before we get caught up in this, the Packers offered as much or more, the structure is critical. We went through this earlier in the week with Randy Gregory and why he ultimately didn't sign with the Cowboys. They were going to jeopardize his guarantee beyond year one. The Broncos weren't going to jeopardize it to the same extent. It's important to have guaranteed money beyond year one. It secures your position. It secures you financially. That's a key part here. But if the Packers were willing to pay that much, Peter, why the hell didn't they do it sooner? There's something to be said about waiting too long to finally come to your senses. And I think for Davante Adams, there's got to be a factor here. Hey, why did I have to push this to the limit? You had months to take care of my contract. You had years to take care of my contract as other guys were getting paid more and more and more, and you saw where the market was going. You wait until you have a gun to your head before you say, oh, okay, here, take it all. For some people, that's off-putting. I shouldn't have had to do this. I shouldn't have had to go out and find somebody else who was willing to pay me this much before you finally wake up. And I think that's an important human factor that gets overlooked in a situation like this. The Packers could have done this long ago and kept Davante Adams forever.
I think when this first happened last night, the first thought that went to my mind when I saw the money, and again, I don't know how the money would have been spread out. I don't know if there would have been phony years built in at the end in Green Bay. But I just started to think to myself, okay, this to me is about the fact that Brian Gutekunst does not want to have two players make a combined $78 million on his cap in 2023 and say 2024 if Aaron Rodgers plays 3 more years. That's the first thing that went through my mind. And again, look, will the Aaron Rodgers contract, what will they make the cap numbers do? And they can redo it every year. I get that. But how far do you want to push this into the future? Or does Brian Gutekunst deep down inside, does he say to himself, okay, look, I understand what everybody says when they look at this year's draft. When people look at this year's draft, you see, when I wrote this, I don't know, a month ago, 3 weeks ago, before the combine, when Daniel Jeremiah told me, he said, hey, listen, you can tape record my remarks on wide receivers, and you can just play them back every year for the next 10 years. This draft is loaded with wide receivers. And what if Brian Gutekunst says to himself, okay, we're going to make this trade with the Raiders, and we now are going to have 4 picks in the top 60. I will use 2 of those picks on, I think if I'm not mistaken, most people have about 7 or 8 receivers like in their top 50. And we are going to isolate on getting 2 receivers in the top 60 in our top 4 picks. and we're going to hope that they can get up to speed this year with Aaron Rodgers. Those are the two things I thought of. Two manageable players, hoping that one of them can be something like Justin Jefferson, so that the last 2 or 3 years of Aaron Rodgers can be relatively prolific.
I agree with all that in theory, but it's still a challenge to get Aaron Rodgers on board with it, because even though there is a great group of receivers entering the NFL every year, and I think the reason for it is very simple. With all the 7-on-7 camps proliferating across the country, high school, college, all these quarterbacks developing, somebody is running the routes and catching the passes. So these guys are developing more quickly than ever. And the receiver position is going to become like the running back position. This was a theme that came up earlier in the week when the Cowboys hot potato Amari Cooper to Cleveland and unload his $20 million salary. You know, I did the math, $53.9 million given to Amari Cooper over 3 years by the Cowboys. They could have used the pick that they sent to the Raiders to get Cooper on A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, and had him for 4 years, $11.4 million. More than $40 million less for longer time, and a fifth-year option on the back end of it. Now, they also could have taken N'Keal Harry. See, that's the problem. Peppered among all these great receivers. Yeah, but that's my point, though. You can say, oh, okay, we got 4 picks in the top 60 now. We're just going to go get a couple of receivers. What if you get the 2 who suck? You don't find out until it's too late.
Right.
And that's, from Aaron Rodgers' perspective.
But Davante Adams was a second-round pick.
I know. But now he's a fully formed all-pro receiver. And from Aaron Rodgers' perspective, he said it himself, Peter, after they lost to the 49ers in the divisional round. I don't want to be part of a rebuild. And even though the full team isn't rebuilding, the receiving core is in shambles right now. When Randall Cobb is the best guy you have under contract right now, Randall Cobb in 2022, not 2012, when that's your best option, you do not have a receiving core. And they have to build the thing from the ground up. Can they get Marquez Valdez-Scantling to come back? He's an unrestricted free agent. Alan Lazard is restricted with a second-round tender. Is somebody going to come try to poach him? I don't know. What are they going to do with these guys? What's Amari Rodgers ever going to become? He was drafted last year by the Packers. There's a lot of work to be done, and this isn't what Rodgers wanted. And I want to know, and we're never going to know. We're never going to know the answer to the question because people don't tell the truth about these things. Did Rodgers have any inkling that Adams wasn't going to be there when Rodgers was deciding what he was going to do in 2022? This whole idea of he became aware in recent days, that is deliberately vague. It doesn't create the timeline. And I see there's a report that maybe Rodgers did know before he put pen to paper. Well, putting pen to paper doesn't matter. He made the commitment publicly on his Twitter feed that he's coming back to the Packers because he had to quibble with the idea of whether or not he signed a contract. He wasn't going to change his mind at that point. Oh, Davante Adams is leaving. Now I'm not staying. He's already said he's coming back. So, and the other thing I want to know, because the agents for Davante Adams went on record and said it was his lifelong dream to play for the Raiders. I mean, basically he's choosing Derek Carr over Aaron Rodgers. That's a hell of a slap in the face to Aaron Rodgers. He's choosing to reunite with a guy he hasn't played with in 8 years to leave the guy that he's played with for the last 8 years. And if the money really was better, and I still don't buy it, I think the structure's better in Las Vegas. But you look at Tom Brady putting the muscle on all these guys to stay in Tampa Bay, and they're like, yes, Tom, whatever you want, Tom. And Rodgers can't persuade the best player on the team to stay, right? What a contrast that is.
Yeah. You know, Mike, the other thing that I really I'm really curious about right now is that, you know, because I didn't even know this until I read it last night, that Davante Adams in the offseason lives in Las Vegas or lives in Nevada somewhere. And I had never heard that before. I mean, I would have no idea where he'd live. But I wonder about that. And I wonder about his closeness, you know, to Derek Carr over the years and whether indeed it was a lifelong dream for him, you know, to play for the Raiders. Those things have to factor in. But I would agree with you. There's got to be something here that, and you said it 5 minutes ago, that if this thing had gotten, if the Packers had gotten sufficiently generous a year ago, there's a very good chance this thing would have been done by now. And so, I kind of look at this as a lost opportunity for Green Bay, that they are going to say to Brian Gutekunst, hey, listen, you have to now be in the same tradition of Ron Wolf trading for Brett Favre when nobody wanted Brett Favre and trading a 1 for Brett Favre. You have to be in the same tradition of Ted Thompson drafting Aaron Rodgers when the Packers didn't need a quarterback. You have to now be in that tradition, because you have to draft minimum 1 and almost certainly 2 receivers who are going to be able to hit the ground running and are going to be able to catch 80 balls this year with Aaron Rodgers and get us back to home field in the NFC playoffs. This is a tremendous amount of pressure, in my opinion, on Brian Gutekunst.
Well, he's already in the latter tradition, drafting a quarterback when you don't need one. That's what caused all this mess 2 years ago when they traded up for Jordan Love. It reminds me, frankly, of the 1999 Packers draft after Randy Moss took the league by storm. I think they took a defensive back in every round that year to try to load up with enough talent to slow down Randy Moss. But this is the objective. And the point about, if the Packers had just put this money on the table 6 months ago, they could have avoided this. That's not just us second-guessing the Packers. I guarantee you that thought is going through the brain of Aaron Rodgers. Hey, Goody screwed around. They had to play this out. They had to do the franchise tag game. They pissed him off, and he had an opening, and he left. And, Rodgers is never going to say, well, the reason this happened is Davante Adams has had enough of me after 8 years and he'd rather play with Derek Carr. He's never going to resolve it that way. He's going to resolve it by saying, we could have kept Davante Adams if we weren't stupid and cheap. But we were stupid and cheap, and now Davante Adams is gone. And I'm stuck with whoever they happen to find in the draft, whoever they happen to bring in, and say, here, Aaron, shape these lumps of clay into receivers who actually will be successful in the NFL. And I sure hope they involve him in the scouting. I sure hope they let him watch some of the film and give some input on which guys he like. And I know in Green Bay, it's, hey, you just throw the football. We'll take care of everything else. But they're going to expect him to work with a cluster of rookies this year. They better be sensitive to which of these guys he likes or doesn't like based upon what he sees on film, because he's going to be watching the film anyway. They may as well get his input, because what if they draft a guy that he has seen on tape and he says, this really isn't my kind of guy?
Can I give you one little X factor in this thing that is probably 180 degrees away from why Davante Adams did this, but I always think about this? Okay. State tax in Wisconsin for high earners like a professional football player, 7.65%. State tax in the state of Nevada on any earners, 0%. So what does that mean? Maybe nothing, probably something. And to me, what it does is just makes the Raiders' buying power when they go out to look for a free agent or when they go out to look for a player in trade, the agents can say, okay, you are taxed on where you work. And so, obviously if you play in the state of Nevada, you are going to be taxed significantly less than if you play in another state. So to me, that most likely, I doubt it was the deciding factor, but that had to be a bit of a factor.
Well, and I agree with you, and that doesn't get discussed nearly enough when it comes to players making their decisions. And one of the reasons, I'm going to be cynical here, and I don't think this is a stretch, the agents get their fee based upon the total dollars, not based on the after-tax dollars. So in some cases, it's not in the best interest of the agent's earning potential to say, you know, the other team's offering you less, but you're not going to pay state income taxes, so you're really making more. But it's an important factor to remember as Green Bay tries very hard to get everyone to accept the idea that they offered Davante Adams as much or more. They don't want to be blamed for this, and that's what is critical to this. There's always going to be blame to be placed, and the easiest blame here is on the Packers, because if you just do this sooner, you don't have this problem. I mean, this contract is a real $28.25 million per year. When DeAndre Hopkins did his deal with the Cardinals for $27 million per year, that's new money. That's money that's dumped into an existing deal. And when you subtract what he was due to make and you average it all out, hey, $27 million, even though the contract as written is not $27 million. It's complicated, and I'm trying to make it simple. Just trust me on that. The new money analysis that happens all the time for an existing contract makes the deal seem better than it is. When you're signing from scratch like Adams is, this is a 5-year deal, period. There's no old contract that gets sucked into this. This is 5 years, 141.25, $28.25 million per year, period. That's real. Now, the structure is going to reveal a lot. How much is paid out the first 2 or 3 years? Because the back end usually gets ripped up if the guy's playing well, or gets ripped up if he's not and he gets told quite politely to pack his things and leave. But this is a great contract for Davante Adams. And again, if the Packers were contemplating anything like this, they should have done it during the season, and Davante Adams would still be with the Green Bay Packers. So this is going to be a factor. And this takes a lot of the steam out of the optimism that Packers fans surely had after Aaron Rodgers stayed. Look around the NFC. It's the place to be now. It's been a bad week for the Packers, though. Tom Brady's back, and Davante Adams is gone.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.